Hey y'all, it's Ash. Today I'm going to be talking about the legal rights of tradwives that may be available. This is going to be a super long video, so I will be putting titles in so y'all can skip through whatever y'all want to skip through. But first of all, let's talk about my credentials to be making this video so people don't think I don't know what I'm talking about. So I am a licensed attorney turned tradwife. So what does that mean? So on the attorney side, I did graduate law school. I passed the bar. I swore in as an attorney in Ohio. I'm actively licensed in Ohio. I do have a solo practice law firm, but I don't really have clients at the moment. I do have one client that is a family business, and that only pays my student loans. So I don't pay any of our expenses as a family. I have done family law. I do not currently practice it. I'll kind of get more into, my experience with family law and why I know this stuff. But just to be clear, I am not paying the bills. I am essentially a tradwife. I am essentially a stay-at-home wife, mom, whatever. Just have that one client that just pays my student loans. And if I didn't have that client anymore, my husband would be paying my student loans. So I am not by any means a provider. On the tradwife side, I got married at 25 to my current husband. And immediately after that, we started fostering a baby girl while I awaited my bar results. I decided while fostering, which was at, again, the beginning of our marriage, I would open my solo practice law firm, and that would allow me to work while still being a stay-at-home mom to her. We did return our foster baby to her birth parents, and I did try to work for some other firms, but I ultimately quit to be a housewife and a dog mom with plans to become a biological mother within 9 months of our marriage. I ended up getting pregnant earlier than anticipated. So I focused on, my pregnancy as well as caring for our dog, who you will probably hear during this video, and our chickens. I will get more into my recommendations on tradwifery at the end of this video. I would say generally that I do recommend women be tradwives if they can, with some, caveats to that. So, not always and not for all men, essentially. I did not want to be a tradwife whatsoever. I actually didn't want to be a wife or a mother whatsoever. And I wanted to focus on my career primarily. And then I fostered that baby girl and everything changed, like full 180 for me. I was terrified to be financially or otherwise reliant on a man before that. And I did not believe that good, kind men who could actually provide me the life that I wanted existed, or that they, if they did exist, I doubted that they would marry me. But my husband is exactly that. He is incredible. He is kind, selfless, Christ-like, and he provides everything I need and want. And, I'm just really grateful that God has blessed me with such an amazing and selfless Christian man who, does not abuse me. I know that's a huge thing in the, tradwife, what's the word I'm looking for? The tradwife haters, essentially. But my husband, is not abusive in any manner, emotionally, physically, financially, any of that stuff. He actually doesn't even expect anything in return for providing me everything I need and want. He has asked me to do 5 things, and those 5 things are do all the laundry, do the dishes. He does help with dishes, but he's asked me to, do a lot of them. Make dinner most of the time. So when he's working, I'm making dinner. He's asked me to do that. He's asked me to grocery shop and also have his children if I'm able to do so. And I am happy to do all of those things, especially in exchange for the life that he has provided me. It has been amazing. It is, just couldn't be happier. And everything else that I do in addition to that, I do out of love for doing it. Not to say that I don't love doing those things, but everything extra is my choice. So that means working out, eating well, and that all supports, my pregnancy. And I choose to do that for, to be able to get pregnant fast, to have a healthy pregnancy, healthy baby, healthy postpartum recovery. I enjoy doing those things. and I do it out of love for doing it, and I'm really grateful I have the ability to do that instead of working a 9 to 5. Keeping the house clean, that's something I choose to do. My husband does not ask me to do that. Unmedicated birth, breastfeeding, my choice 100%. He actually wanted me to have a medicated birth because he doesn't want me to be in pain. He was neutral on breastfeeding, let me choose what I wanted to do. And also caring for the chickens. He did not ask me to have chickens. That was my choice. I'm really grateful that he, bought them and bought everything we need for them. But that, I choose to do that, and I love doing it most of the time, unless it's raining in the morning when I have to go open the coop door. But other than that, it's been great. He did not force me to move out here to the country where he grew up. He introduced me to it. He introduced me to this area. I loved it. And I actually pushed him to move here. And he wanted that all along anyways, but he was a little bit more patient than I was. I fell in love with it as soon as he showed it to me. But he does not expect me to do any of those things that I listed, anything beyond those 5 things he's asked me to do. And even if I didn't do those 5 things, he would probably complain and be like, okay, so what's going on? Because I'm doing the financial stuff, and what are you gonna do, kind of thing, which is completely justified. But those are the only 5 things he's asked me to do. I'm happy to do them. So to be clear, a lot of those things I do out of love and passion for them. And I have gotten cybersecurity degrees. I tried to go to vet school. I actually completed law school and the bar exam. And none of those career paths have ever made me as happy as being a housewife and a stay-at-home mom. I love it more than anything I've, done or tried to do. So all that being said, I know what I'm talking about from both ends. I know the legal side, family law stuff, and I also know the reality of being a tradwife. So now for disclaimers, which are very important if you're an attorney. So I am only licensed as an attorney in Ohio. I do qualify to practice in any UBE jurisdiction, but I'm not licensed in any other UBE jurisdiction or any jurisdiction other than Ohio. I just scored high enough to practice in any UBE jurisdiction on the bar exam. But again, I'm not licensed. I'm only licensed in Ohio. I did practice family law for about a year. I do not now. My law firm does not provide family law services. I do know several family law attorneys and would be happy to refer people if they need a family law attorney. But please do not come to me for family law advice, or do not come to my firm for family law services. I did receive a Cali Award for family law in law school 2 years ago, and my knowledge of this topic comes from that class and my short-term experience with family law. This is not legal advice whatsoever. None of my videos are, and this does not form an attorney-client relationship. Again, I am not doing family law right now, so this is very family law focused. So, there really should be no confusing if this is legal advice or not, because I'm not practicing family law. I'm just sharing what I have learned and things that may help other tradwives or women who may be, nervous about being a tradwife if they think that something bad will happen to them in the event of divorce. And that is all I'm covering today, is just what protections do tradwives have in the event of divorce. We're not going to talk about prenups. We're not going to talk about protections during the course of the marriage. We're just going to do a high-level summary view of what protections a tradwife would have if her husband were to divorce her. So now on to the part that you all have been waiting for, which is the information piece, right? So we're going to go through 2 main rights or protections that a tradwife may have. The first is property distribution, and the second is spousal support. We will primarily be looking at this through an Ohio lens because that's where I went to law school and that's where I am licensed to practice. But I will briefly touch on some other, not states specifically, but just some other types of rights, I guess, that may not be available in Ohio, but may be available elsewhere. So first of all, we're going to talk about property distribution. So what is that basically? It's essentially when you divorce, who gets what, right? And there are 3 property distribution systems in the United States to divide marital assets. So the first one is a separate title system. It is common law and it is now pretty much outdated. We won't talk too much about that because that's not Ohio. There's the community property system. You've probably heard of community property states, even if you haven't been to law school or aren't familiar with legal things, right? And that is available in Arizona, California, Idaho, Louisiana, New Mexico, Nevada, Texas, and Washington. Again, since that's not, Ohio, we're not going to go through that. But the system that Ohio uses is called the equitable distribution system. And essentially what that is first of all, the marital property, or what marital property is defined by statute, or by essentially what a statute is it's a rule, it's a law, right? And the equitable distribution system looks at marriage as a joint enterprise whose vitality, success, and endurance depends on multiple components, not just financial. So looking at the housekeeping, the child rearing, that sort of thing. And we'll go more into those factors later on, but essentially what you need to know is we're not just looking at who financially contributed in the marriage. We're looking at multiple different factors. So essentially the worth of both non-economic and economic factors are entitled to substantial recognition. So they're basically saying we are going to actually recognize and actually look at both who contributed financially to the marriage and who contributed otherwise. And if both parties contributed in both ways, they're going to look at that, I'm not going to say equally, but they're going to look at both essentially. Under this system, there is an assumption that all property that is acquired legally or equitably during the marriage by either party is marital property. And you can overcome this assumption by sufficient evidence showing that the item is non-marital property. So you have to essentially prove that it is not marital property. There is a presumption that the assets are divided equally, so 50-50, but the court can deviate from this if it's necessary to render equitable and fair results. And the example that I gave in law school was that one party was the primary child caregiver or a homemaker. So this could go either way too. So the court may award more than 50% to a Tradwife, right? If, that's going to render an equitable and fair result in the divorce. But they may also give more to the provider, to the breadwinner, if that is going to create an equitable and fair result. It really is going to depend on the court. So just to recap, marital property under this system is defined by statute broadly. It includes real and personal property acquired by either or both of the spouses during the course of the legal marriage. So from when you get legally married, and then to before the date of separation, right? And separation and divorce are different. I can make another video on that at some other point. I may talk about that on Ask Jarrett Law podcast, probably the latter, because that podcast is more for legal info and this is more for fun and lifestyle stuff. But essentially it's real or personal property acquired by just one or both of you during your legal marriage and before you're separated, right? And it can be given by devise, descent, or gift during the marriage. So that does include, your inheritance or a gift given to you by your family. And if your family wants to only give that gift to you, they need to state their intent in that conveyance. So, this house only to my daughter and not to my daughter and her husband. And you can say not marital property if you want to. I talked to an attorney about that who actually handles those sort of things. So now on to spousal support. And this, to be clear, is not just for women. Either gender may have to supply funds to provide necessaries to their ex. It does not happen in every case. It's not awarded in every case. Definitely get an attorney if you're going through something like this. But, this in the Tradwife sense, it could require the husband, the provider, to fund the necessities of the Tradwife's lifestyle after divorce. So that does not mean, luxury lifestyle. It means probably, housing, food, that sort of thing. Again, not going to go too into this because I'm not familiar with this as an attorney, but just, necessaries, right? Things you need to live. In Wood versus Wood, which is a case I read about in law school, they looked at the homemaker's contribution to the appreciation of an asset. So, for instance, for a Tradwife, if they are cleaning the home, if they're doing repairs, if they're doing maybe some renovations, they're going to look at that and be like, well, your wife's contribution to the home increased its value by $20,000 or something like that. That seems a little much, but you never know. And then some of the factors that they looked at for their just spousal support in general, and also for this, is the length of the marriage, the relationship between the parties, the types of services performed by the non-titled spouse. So for instance, my husband is on the title of this house. I am not. However, I do a lot of things around the home. So they would look at the services that I provide to this home, even though I'm not on the title, to award me something. So the goal of alimony or spousal support is to help the spouse achieve, so the Tradwife, achieve the life they had during the marriage, right? And you're going to compensate that Tradwife or whoever for homemaking, child rearing, and the opportunity costs of homemaking. So what opportunities did you give up in order to be this Tradwife? I gave up a career as an attorney to be a Tradwife, essentially, right? And, funnily enough, sometimes a spouse can be compensated for supporting their spouse in education for the life that they expect to have after their spouse finished school. So, for instance, if you're a Tradwife and your husband, decides he wants to go to medical school, so you start working, and he divorces you right after he finishes med school, right? You expected him to make $300,000 a year after med school, and you paid for everything, you did all the housework, you did everything while he was in med school, and then he divorces you as soon as, he gets out of med school. You never get that $300,000 a year that you were expecting. You can be compensated for that in some cases. The ALI formula also discusses alimony, and it looks at alimony as compensation for economic loss incurred by the spouse as a result of the marriage, including lost employment, which we talked about, earlier, not going out and being an attorney and instead being a homemaker and a stay-at-home mom, and educational opportunities. So, I maybe didn't go to med school because I decided to be a Tradwife, right? And it compensates for that, for any of those things, leading to disparities in post-divorce earning capabilities or capacities. So essentially, because I couldn't work as an attorney because I was raising your children and keeping your home and doing all these things for you, you are going to have to compensate me for, what I lost and what I could have earned had I not been doing all this for you and had I been working, that sort of thing, right? So, like I said, spousal support is not guaranteed. It is possible. The court may grant it to you if you have spent many years as a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom or a Tradwife, whatever you want to call it, and you sacrifice your career or your future ability for your career to do those things, right? So again, me as an example, I gave up working as an attorney. No, probably not big law, but maybe working for another firm and making a lot of money so that I could be a homemaker and a stay-at-home mom. The UMDA also discusses spousal support, and it will, it encourages spousal support if a spouse does not have sufficient property or cannot get employment for whatever reason. So some relevant factors that the UMDA looks at that excludes marital fault. So marital fault would be maybe like adultery, that sort of thing. So the factors that they do look at are financial resources of the party seeking maintenance, the time necessary to acquire sufficient education or training to find appropriate employment, contributions of each party to the marriage, standard of living established during the marriage, duration of the marriage, age, physical, and emotional condition of the spouse seeking maintenance, and the ability of the spouse from whom maintenance is sought to meet his needs while meeting those of the spouse seeking maintenance. And again, those genders can be flipped, but essentially, kind of giving examples with me and my husband. Maybe I need to go take the bar exam again, right? I let my license expire. So he would have to maintain me until I could renew my license. I could take the bar exam again and wait for my results and swear in, that sort of thing. What did I contribute to the marriage? I bore the children. I fed them. I, took care of them all the time. I did all the housework. I did all the farm work. I did all these things, right? What was my standard of living during the marriage? It's pretty great. So they may tell me to tone it down a little bit. They're going to look at how long we've been married. We haven't been married very long. So they would take that into account. But if we're married for 30 years, they're going to be like, oh, well, she's been doing this for 30 years. She hasn't been doing, a job, right? Like a 9-to-5 job. They're going to look at, I'm pretty young. My age would be probably factored against me, right? I'm in good physical shape. I do have some medical conditions, but I'm pretty fine, right? Emotional condition. We're not going to talk about my emotional condition. I am heavily pregnant. And I assume I wouldn't be if anything happened. And then the ability of him to, support himself and me. He'd have to be able to provide me with the life that I'm asking for, with that spousal support, as well as taking care of all his own expenses and taking care of himself. So I couldn't, bankrupt him and getting spousal support from him, right? It would have to be, he can maintain both of us for the court to approve that, essentially, under that factor. So what is my recommendation? Do I recommend that you become a Tradwife? You are probably going to have some protections unless, like I said at the beginning of the video, you have a prenup or something. I would definitely research the laws of your state if you're not in Ohio. I still would research the laws in your state if you live in Ohio. I am not, again, a family law attorney. I just have experience with it and, did well in the class. I would definitely recommend talking to an attorney or having a safety net, right, if you decide to be a Tradwife. But those are just recommendations. I think at the very least, you need to make sure that you are legally married to this person so you are afforded some of the protections. So you can potentially get that, property distribution. You can have maybe 50% of their assets or property, as well as, potentially getting spousal support. Again, it's not a guarantee, but you don't really have a chance of it if you are, a stay-at-home girlfriend or a stay-at-home fiance. There's a lot of great things about being legally married, and I highly encourage it. I can also make a video or a podcast about that if anyone's interested. I know marriage is becoming less popular and divorce rates are going up. But if you do it with the right person, it's awesome, and it does give you protections if you decide to be a Tradwife. So again, being a Tradwife is amazing. Love it. Highly recommend, as long as you're legally married. Definitely recommend, kind of testing the waters before you do it. Make sure that you are married to someone who can provide for both of you and your family. If you decide to have one, make sure that they can handle that financial burden on their own, and make sure that they are not going to use it against you or be abusive towards you in any manner. And there are different types of abuse, okay? There's not just physical, there's emotional, there's financial, there's a lot of other different types of abuse, and they should not be using this against you because, you know what, they'd be working even if you weren't a Tradwife, right? So definitely be careful, but if you get married to an awesome man and you decide to be a Tradwife, he can handle the financial burden. Get legally married so you have those protections. Hopefully nobody ever gets divorced. I don't like divorce, but if it happens, then at least you have some protections. And then again, try to have a safety net or two. I personally have two. both my career and my family. So that's kind of been a factor for me. It doesn't have to be a factor for you. But as you can see, there are some protections for Tradwives. So for the people I've seen on Facebook being like, oh, this is why you never see 40 or 50-year-old Tradwives, because they got divorced because their husband left them for a younger woman, and they're disillusioned with it and they have nothing now. And I'm kind of like, well, first of all, I don't think that's why they're not on social media making videos about being a Tradwife. I think it's just a generational thing, but also it's not true that you're necessarily always going to be left with nothing if your husband decides to divorce you if you're a Tradwife. So I hope this was helpful. I know it was super long-winded, but I just wanted to make sure I got all of that out there. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.